That was one of the issues that we had a lot with Ultimate Frisbee was whenever it got windy, it was really hard to convey how windy it was out there. And everyone has gone to the beach and thrown a Frisbee before on the beach on a windy day and realizes how difficult it is, but it's just very hard to convey how windy it is on the field. And so when you're seeing people mess up on throws, you know, you're like, what the heck? These guys suck. And I think, too, disc golf has a little bit of that as well. I've heard tons of stories. And even when I took Kelsey out for the first time and, like, I would make a 60-foot putt, there would be no celebration, right? And I've heard stories of people, like, making aces with their girlfriends or whatever coming out and watching him and then not celebrating because they're just like, oh, aren't you supposed to do that every time? Like, there's a huge disconnect in the difficulty of disc golf versus in golf. If you take a random person that doesn't play golf to watch you play golf and you hit a 300-yard drive off the tee, they're going to be like, holy cow, you hit the crap out of the ball. Or if you make a 50-foot putt, 30-foot putt on the green, they're going to be like, wow, great putt. It's easier for whatever reason. And I don't know if that's just because people are used to it, like, or more accustomed to it. It kind of seems like disc golf's almost in the darts, like cornhole, right? Like cornhole, I'm expecting people to throw it into the hole.
Yeah.
So like when someone does that, I'm not like, oh my gosh, that's incredible, darts. I'm expecting pros to hit triple 20. So when they do that, I'm not shocked either. Bowling, same thing with bowling. If someone got a strike in bowling that was a good bowler, I wouldn't be
shocked.
I wouldn't be shocked. But I just think disc golf, for whatever reason, it isn't there. I think the distance off, like in-person distance, I think that is the shock factor.
Definitely.
Because you definitely get that too when you're playing through people at your local course and you throw a huge hyzer or something, a line that they've never tried or ever seen on a local course. They'll be like, oh my gosh. So that exists the same, I think, in golf, where if you smash a drive off the tee. But when it comes to like actually getting the disc in the basket, that's something that, again, I just don't think people think is as hard as it is, if that makes sense. Like throwing a shot in from 150 feet is very difficult. But when you do it, people aren't really like, oh, like that's what you're supposed to do. So I don't know how you beat that. I don't know how you beat that.
I don't know if you can, because it's similar. Cornhole is a great example because, like, I think it seems achievable for your average person.
Yes.
Is what it ends up being. Because, like, throwing a Frisbee on the beach, it's pretty simple. Like, to throw it, there's a lot of people that are good at throwing a Frisbee 40, 50 feet and hitting the person standing there.
Mm-hmm.
We know as disc golfers that is not the same as putting.
No.
But it has the same feel. So, like, especially like you, for instance, doing trick shots all the time. Then when you hit a scuba or you make a long putt, viewers who watch you do trick shots, have never played disc golf and watch you play disc golf, it's like, yeah, of course Brodie's going to do that. I'm surprised when Brodie doesn't do that because it's not the same thing. You know what I mean? But it obviously also the trick shots take a long time to hit, even though on camera it might not look that way. But it just conveys this like level of easiness. And cornhole is a similar thing of like, if you are a somewhat coordinated person and you play cornhole, you're gonna be able to make one here and there. So when you see a pro play cornhole, of course I'm expecting that pro to be dialed, and they are. And what's impressive about cornhole is like the placement they end up. But if you just watch cornhole and the guy like was barely getting on the board, it'd be like, what the heck's this guy doing? He's awful. When cornhole, they have a lot more going on, and you know that might be even they're farther than we normally play cornhole. I think they are, and stuff like that. But it's really hard to convey that difficulty when you relate it, much like we relate to throwing Frisbees on the beach.
These are the two things. These are two things, real quick, Silas, that I think. One, I think there's just so many people that haven't played disc golf that they are going, like you said, Hunter, exactly, like they're going to have that idea of like, oh, throwing a Frisbee isn't hard. And then two, I got sucked in this trap too of where I'm playing my local courses and I'm thinking I'm all that in a bag of chips. And then I go and I start playing Pro Tour level courses that add OB, that add hazards, that add length. and it's a whole different ball game. And so I think for one, the person that's never played disc golf before and just looks at it similar to cornhole and thinks like that looks super easy. But then you also have the disc golfers that might play casually at their local pitch and putt. And so they just assume that is kind of the same style of courses across the way. And they don't have a New London in their area to where if you want to get humbled, you can go to New London and get humbled and be like, okay, I thought I was good at disc golf, but I'm really not. And I think that's really tough because there are very few courses like that, just even in the United States. So there's a chance that you have a lot of disc golfers that play casually and they're only playing on very easy courses and they don't really understand like how disc golf is played on a more challenging course.
Because that's true in golf as well, but it's a different scale. Because in golf, any course like the tour courses are going to be harder,
way harder.
But a rando is not going to show up to Poplar Forest, even, which is a very easy course. And like par. I tried for over a month. I still haven't broke 100.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So that's shooting 28 over. So a rando is going to be able to show up at Peaksview Park, though, and get to shooting even par if they tried as hard as they could for a month. And then they look at a tour course and they're like, these guys are only shooting 10 under.
That's where it's easy. Like, we're not cornhole in the fact of like I'm just trying to think to myself, like, how much better could I get at cornhole from right now? I haven't played cornhole in who knows how long, right? My skill level of getting better in cornhole from where I am right now is probably so small, right? Like,
yeah.
Sure, I can get better with practice, but not that much better. Disc golf, I think we're kind of in between cornhole and golf, right? Because like golf, like you said, if you suck at golf, you can be really bad. And then with practice and stuff, you can get a lot better. Disc golf, I think we're kind of in between those two. We're not golf, we're not cornhole, we're kind of in the middle of where like a casual can come out to a disc golf course, never play before, and still probably shoot close to even par on like a pitch and putt and think like, oh, this game's like mini golf. We're like mini golf. Disc golf is very much like mini golf on the local course scene. Like if you go to local course scene, it's like mini golf. And the only way to get away from that is literally if local courses, and this is not going to happen obviously, but if local courses, basically what tournaments do when they come to a local course is they flood it with OB. And now all of a sudden that course becomes a lot more challenging. So, yeah. All right. Silas, did you have something you were going to say something?
Oh yeah. I was just going to say, I think the most impressive thing you can do in disc golf is just like throw really far.
Yes.
And that would impress someone who knows nothing about
and the control of a disc.
Yeah.
Like watching a disc flip up and ride.
Yeah.
No beginner can get a disc to do that.
Right.
But I think the key is
unless you have a meteor.
Having that. Yes, or a soul. But the key is having that player have at least thrown a disc before.
Yeah.
That's a key.
Yeah.
Because if I've never thrown a disc before and I watch someone, it's very easy for me to be like, oh, well, I could do that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't, by nature, unless someone's throwing 450 plus, like if you go, the first time I take people out, I take them to Peaksview. Without fail, what I do at Peaksview does not look impressive to them. Because why would it? All it looks like is it looks like I took them to putt-putt and have the course memorized. Like, of course I know how to get the disc to be that close. It doesn't seem very impressive to them. They're impressed that I'm throwing it twice as far as them, but what they don't realize is I can throw it 4 times as far as them. There's just no need to at Peaksview.
Yeah.
So then if I were to take a beginner to New London, A, they would never play disc golf again, but then they would have the same, like, understanding, like if I went and had, like if we took Connor, who's never really played golf, because when I started playing golf this time around, I had at least played before, so I had somewhat of understanding, but we took Connor or Silas, who had never played golf, and their first experience with golf, because this is what happens in disc golf, you don't go to driving range, you don't go to the putting green, you just show up, and you're playing right next to Brodie in golf. What Brodie does is going to be way more impressive because what the course asks is way more.
Yeah.
That's a similar feeling to you the first time someone plays disc golf. You go to a New London, you go to somewhere like that, to where it's like, oh my gosh, Brodie's like hitting like a drive. Brodie will hit like 300 yards, and you're like, I'm lucky if I can even hit the ball. And it's a similar thing of like, I'm lucky if I can throw this disc 50 feet and not hit a tree. And Brodie's 450 feet down there, and he threw a straight shot. How'd he do that? when you take people to play disc golf, you take them to putt first. Because like if you go to putt, you're not impressed with what Brodie does at putt. It's like, well, yeah, but I mean, I was close doing it.
Also, too, another thing is I think there isn't enough gap between like putters, mids, fairway drivers, right? We have 4 different classifications of discs, and like I just did a video of trying to attempt to throw a putter 500 feet. Like, now obviously I'm not throwing like a stock putter shot, but the fact that I can get a putter close to 500 feet, a mid close to 500 feet, a fairway just over 500, and like there's not a big enough gap there to where there is a little of where if we get to a hole and you're like, I'm throwing a distance driver, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to throw a putter. There's a little bit of like being like, oh wow, you're throwing a putter on this hole, but it's a lot more if we were playing golf and you're like, I'm hitting a 4-iron on this par 3, and I'm like, really? I'm going pitching wedge. Like that right there is like everyone can kind of get an idea of like, holy cow, this guy hits the ball so much farther than me. He's hitting a wedge, I'm hitting a long iron. So I think that also helps with what you were saying too, with going to like a mini golf thing. You're not really showcasing that skill of being able to hit the ball far and accurately. Same thing with going to a pitch and putt. You're not really being able to showcase that skill of because no one really cares if they're throwing a driver on a 300-foot hole and you're throwing a putter. I don't think that is something that correlates with like newer disc golfers. Like, oh my gosh, wow, you're throwing a putter. Like,
yeah,
it's not as big of a gap. So
it's definitely. I think it's one of the biggest hurdles disc golf has.
It's a huge hurdle. I think it's a huge hurdle.
And I don't really know if there's a great solution because. The other problem too is people aren't introduced to disc golf by watching it first. People are introduced to disc golf by going and playing a local course first, more likely than not. Whereas any other sport, other than like cornhole, darts, stuff like that, that's not the case. You're introduced to golf a lot of times by watching. Like, I'd be shocked if someone who is going out to play golf has never watched at least a clip of Tiger Woods hitting a golf ball. But at a disc golf course, it's not going to shock me if they're like, I've never seen a pro throw a disc.
There's also something too. I think there's probably other sports like this, like other niche sports like skateboarding, maybe surfing, running. Oh, but maybe I'm just trying to think. There, some of these sports like football, baseball, basketball, maybe not so much, but football and baseball for sure. People watch these games, but they don't play. And our sport is very much more in the playing realm. And same thing kind of with golf. There's probably not that many people that are watching golf tournaments and don't play golf.
Yeah.
Right? And so we're in that realm of, we are, like you were saying, people get introduced to the sport by playing it and then watching it, and not so much by watching it and like just being like, oh my God, this looks incredible. And if they do think it looks incredible, then they're probably going to go out and play it. So
yeah.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't even know if necessarily that is a good thing or a bad thing, but I do think you probably reach a much smaller audience, right? Like I don't think anyone's tuning into disc golf that doesn't play because they find it entertaining.
Very, very small percentage. Yeah. I've seen some comments like on our YouTube videos and stuff, but it's a very small percentage. And a lot of them are like what you said, like, oh, I stumbled on this. This looks fun. I got to play.
Yeah. It seems to me it's like one of those that once, I'll give an example of my viewing. Like, I used to really be into triathlons, and so I used to bike all the time. And at that time, like, the Tour de France was huge. I loved watching it, and I couldn't tell you the last time. And I still bike on my Peloton and stuff, but I just couldn't tell you the last time I watched the Tour de France. And I think like certain sports like that, and I think disc golf falls into that, of where it's like when you're in it and you're playing it, you're going to tune in and watch. But as soon as you like have other stuff going on, it kind of falls to the wayside.